Okay, ladies and gentlemen, the room's filling up. This is Jim Nowakowski talking to you from Interline Creative Group, Palatine, Illinois. We've got a great presentation ahead for all of you. Hopefully you'll enjoy it. Take copious notes. There's a question box on your screen there. Everything else should be fine. We'll be getting started momentarily. Stay tuned. It's going to be a great session. Hopefully you'll take notes. There is a question box. Let's get started. This is a copyright presentation, but you're welcome to send me an email when you're done. I'll be happy to send you the slide deck in a PDF file format, even though we encourage note-taking. Being a former teacher, it's always good to take notes, and I do talk fast sometimes when I get excited, so I apologize. This is an AIA approved course. We have architects and designers in the audience who want this credit. You will get full credit when we're done. If you need help in getting your certificates, let us know. Send us an email. This is also IDCEC approved. You'll get full credit for the hour. In this case, if you need the credit and need help, let us know. And it's also NKBA approved. This course was revamped after COVID, in a COVID environment specifically, and it got record time approval. So we're looking forward to presenting to you. At the end of this course, we hope all of you we're going to review business basics, right? And we're going to talk about how these basics have not, let me repeat that, have not changed despite COVID-19. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, I'm here to tell you, business basics stay the same, but I'm going to talk to you about a little bit about what has changed. This includes determining your value proposition, because COVID-19 made really just barraged value propositions and drove them down. People couldn't focus on your value, much less their own value. And then we're going to still talk about differentiation, what sets you apart, which still remains critical despite the COVID. This is the first part of the course. And then the second part of the course, we're going to review tactics on what you need to stay in front of your customers in a digital environment that is also still having this darn virus hang around. I always like to begin with a story. This is a poster I have hanging up in my office, and when I interview people for jobs here at Interline, which hasn't been recent, but when I do, I show them this poster and I ask them, what do you see? And they inevitably tell me they see two guys talking at a party, and that's good. And then I continue to probe. If you've heard of what a Rorschach test is, a Rorschach test is the ink blot test that they created when you're doing psychological analysis. And as you know, if you've ever done one of those as practice, there is no right or wrong answer. So in this case, there is no right or wrong answer. But what this allows me to do is test the creativity, the viability of a candidate, because there is no right or wrong answer, but I'm just curious what they will say. Inevitably, they will look at it and start making up a story or not. And most of the time, they'll look at the guy on the left and someone will say, that looks like Robert Redford. So we had an intern last year, despite the virus in January, working here at Interline, and I gave her the test. This is a young college student, a friend of mine's college student. And she did not say that the guy on the left looked like Robert Redford. And when I said, does he look like Robert Redford? She replied, in all sincerity, who is Robert Redford? And that's when I really realized something's going on. Then COVID hit, and I really realized something going on. And what was really going on is the need for communication and an established platform in communicating your value or your knowledge to someone else. Because if you don't know who Robert Redford is, you're going to miss a whole section of this thing. So if you Google Robert Redford Rorschach, you'll find my blog about that experience. I encourage you to read that. First things first, you live in an exabyte and COVID world. You know that when COVID hit, everything went digital, right? Zoom rooms were created. Everybody was buying online from Amazon. We just finished major research for a company, and it's incredible what people were buying online. So if you're selling a service, which you do, because you're architects, you're designers, you're showroom consultants, et cetera, COVID really hit us hard, didn't it? Architectural offices closed. Even today, you can't go in to see an architect sometimes, even with an appointment. They prefer the Zoom. So COVID is going to change the way you and I work and sell our stuff. Then the first question you really want to ask yourself is what the heck you're selling? What are you selling? Now, the architects think they're selling architecture and the designers think they're selling design, and that's all true. That's really not. Because what you're selling and everyone is selling right now because of COVID, and I thought about whispering this word, but I don't know if I should whisper it. Safety. People want to feel safe. That's really what your first priority is to make people feel safe. And I know the vaccine, I got the vaccine, all that stuff. But you really want to understand people's psyche in this COVID environment. Because it wasn't the virus necessarily that changed our behavior and the way we sell things. It was the lockdowns. When the governments locked down, some states more than others, it changed behaviors of selling. It affected all of us. We're going to talk about that today. So you really want to know what you're selling and how you sell it, and who buys what you're selling today, and who doesn't buy it. And most people weren't buying during 2020. And how do people buy what you're selling? And does anyone know what you're selling? It's very confusing. I always show this graphic because this is the man in the chair. McGraw-Hill used to run this whenever there was a recession, because the first thing people cut in a recession, not a virus, not a lockdown, not a pandemic, but a recession, was advertising. People would stop advertising. So McGraw-Hill, who was a publisher, would run this ad and remind people, this is why you advertise, to announce yourself before the guy gets there. So they found this gentleman in accounting. Apparently he looks like a really mean guy. And they threw him in this chair and they said, I don't know you, I don't know your company, I don't know, and you can read that for yourself. And now what do you want to sell me? And they were trying to remind people with the moral to the story that sales start before the salesperson calls. It really does with advertising and so on and so forth. But that's another topic. And it was very successful. Some people who advertised during recessions gained market share. I could name you two companies right now. One, which is now $1 billion distributor in the electrical industry, Graybar. They would never stop advertising. Recession, depression, it doesn't matter. They were advertising. They grew from a little St. Louis company all the way into a $1 billion company today. And you know who I'm talking. Some of you know who I'm talking about. But what happened subsequently is when the internet arrived, everything went to mobility, right? You carry your phone. Everything is on the phone. Everything became digital. So you had to communicate digitally. Well, the good news is that worked for a while until the pandemic came. And now, quite frankly, who cares? If everybody's afraid of dying, if everybody's afraid of catching a virus, if everybody's wearing a mask, who cares about what you're selling? That's what we have to talk about today. We have to understand how to get people to care about what you're selling. Because if they don't care about what you're selling, they're not going to buy it. You understand? And right now, that pandemic, even though we're breaking out, Jim, the economy's coming back. Yeah. If you saw the latest construction statistics as I have, there's still remodeling, different story, right? Some of the showrooms in the audience today are very busy. Some of the remodelers in the audience are very busy. I know I was talking to a remodeler the other day. He's booked 6 months out. That's great. But what about the rest of us, ladies and gentlemen? How many customers do you have? That's a great question. And whenever I gave this live, somebody in the smarty pants in the audience would say, not enough. Well, no one has enough customers today. If you have too many, how many do you want? You're going to lose business because you won't be able to service them. And that's another story, right? You want just enough. But right now, everybody's reaching for customers. There's nothing more important, as I'm going to demonstrate in a moment, than gaining and retaining customers. And you do that mostly, all of us in the audience, in fact, anybody not in the audience does that mostly by creating relationships. The problem with relationships when the pandemic hit is that pandemic broke the relationships. And it made people afraid. People became afraid. They're still afraid. You can't be afraid. You have to take a leadership position in what you're selling, differentiate yourself, and move forward and show people they don't have to be afraid. And therefore, you're going to need short and long-term goals, which are different since the pandemic hit. Our goals have changed since the pandemic hit. The fact that we're still standing with our 15 people, the fact that you're in the audience still standing, is a testimony to what your resilience, to the way you operate, and to the fact that you're here today devoting an hour of your time, which you'll never get back, trying to understand what the heck to do during this pandemic-ridden world we live in now. So if you have questions, again, put them in the question box. Because quite frankly, the pandemic makes us say, who cares? The pandemic is saying, who cares what you want, how many customers you have? There's a pandemic going on. You cannot let the pandemic dictate your behavior. Should I repeat that? You cannot let the pandemic dictate your behavior in business. This is very important. I'm not saying throw the masks away. I'm not saying that. I'm saying you cannot let the pandemic stop you from doing business or have your customers stop doing business, because now you have to make it about you. Whenever I taught this course pre-pandemic, I said I told designers in room after room where I would present this at NKB when they put me on tour one year, it's not about you, it's about them, ladies and gentlemen. And you know this, instinctively you know this as a business, that it's not about you, it's about them. Unfortunately, the pandemic, the virus, COVID-19, makes it about COVID-19. And that's where you have to change that's where you got to change the paradigm. You have to now make it about you. You have to break through. You have to break through that pandemic, that fear, and talk about you to your customers. Recently, I asked Google, everybody goes to Google. Before COVID, 75% of people went to Google to find things out. By the way, we have another thing coming up on websites the next month. If you're not on page one with your website, when people ask questions about what you do, then you're really not being under consideration. So I asked Google, what is the biggest challenge a business faces today? And it returned to me millions of results, of which the first on page one were 66 things, 33 things, 5 things you need to know. So what I did is I compiled a list from all those posts on page one, and I made a chart, which is what you're looking at now. This is the first time I've shared this with anybody. I'm going to blog about it. The posts on answering this question, most of them said recruiting and hiring the right people are the biggest challenge business faces today. If you've listened to the news at all in this last week, you're finding out with the jobs report on Friday, that is in fact what people can't do. They cannot find, nor can they hire the right people. And you're sitting back there saying to yourself, what is wrong with that picture? I am the right architect. I am the right designer. I am the right manufacturer. I am the right person. What are they talking about? Well, they're talking about it filling a need in the service business. I don't care who you are or what you do in my audience today. You are in the service business. Service is one of your pillars, right? I mean, if you can't find people to service, or if you only have 24 hours in the day, I'm willing to pay anyone in the audience $1, $50, if you can find me the 25th hour, but you can't, right? So recruiting and hiring the right people is in fact a challenge. So is technology. So is monitoring performance factors and the uncertainty of the future, yada, yada, and 27 other challenges. But guess what? If you know what a root cause is, none of these make any sense, because the root cause is finding and retaining customers. That's the biggest challenge you face, I face, everyone faces. And you do it by fostering relationship. And now you have to break through the fear and talk about what you do to your customers. This includes your current customers and your prospects. What was true before COVID is that most of your customers, you're going to disagree with this perhaps, but most of your customers didn't know all you do. I was talking to an architect the other day, and the architect says, I don't know, Jim, I don't know what I can talk about. Everybody knows what I do as an architect. We finished talking 45 minutes later. We were having coffee at, at a local restaurant, which by the way, they open, right? And in 45 minutes, I proved to him he was not only wrong, he was really wrong. Because even though he was an architect specializing in education, he did things that other architects did not do. Did not do. That's what you have to talk about. That's what's going to break through for you through this virus infected world. Imagine you're a customer for a moment. Imagine you're the customer, right? And you're the customer. How many telemarketing calls do you get nowadays? If you remember last year when COVID hit, boy, did they drop. The phone stopped ringing, right? Suddenly they're picking up again, but you have call blockers. But if you're a customer, how often are you contacted by people? And how often do you want to be contacted by people? If you're afraid, if COVID's got you by your ankles, right? You don't want to be contacted. You're afraid. I see people driving with masks on in their car, and I'm thinking to myself, whether you got the vaccination or not, it's an interesting visual to imagine driving with a mask on in your own vehicle. You understand? I mean, it's just an interesting dynamic. So, how often do you want to be contacted by people in business? You want to start contacting people about what you can offer them. Gensler is one of the largest architects in the world. They have never, since COVID-19 started, they have never stopped talking to their customers. If you're interested, send me an email when we're done. I'll send you what they send me every week. It's a newsletter called Dialogue, and it's loaded with information about what they're doing in commercial, residential, institutional, educational, healthcare, what they're doing in that environment as architects to combat COVID-19 and what that next look is going to be in those buildings. You know, I'm getting excited talking to you. You know why? Ladies and gentlemen, there's opportunities everywhere. What are they going to do with the hotels? What are they going to do with these commercial buildings that are sitting empty now? Empty. Well, Jim, they'll be coming back. Things will be back to normal. I had a gentleman asked me the other day, one of my associates, when will things be back to normal? And I had to tell him point blank, that's never going to happen. It's never going to be back to what it was. So what you and I and everyone else in this audience has to do is forge ahead, and you forge ahead with your value proposition. You have to cut through that virus, get people off of that worry about COVID-19 and talk about what they need to do to help them. It's not about you, it's about them. Was true before the virus. You have to now make them care about you. You have to flip this. Then you can still talk about them and what they need and what they want, yada, yada, right? But you have to somehow break through with a compelling argument to do something, to renovate that room at the house, to do something. You know, Zoom took off, right? Now there's Zoom rooms. You know, there's a whole industry, beginning to grow in the background of what your Zoom room looks like in the background. You can become overnight a consultant to Zoom room backgrounds. I'm serious. Not the digital backgrounds. I'm talking about the real backgrounds that people see. Value is what your customer perceives as worth something. And that's true regardless of COVID. Value is a perception, and the perception today is either about the virus or about what you have to offer them. Make it about what you have to offer them. That's why they do business with you. Besides, the virus was intangible. Would you agree with that? Nobody could see it. They just told us that it's there. You couldn't see it. You know when you got it, right? Well, guess what? Your value is intangible. Your value right today, and even before COVID, was intangible. People didn't see your value. They felt your value. And unlike product features, what they felt, what you're selling, is often intangible. A security light is a light. You can talk about its range. You can talk about how many lumens it has, but it is not selling light, it's selling security. That's what you're selling people. You're selling people security, you're selling people lack of fear, you're selling people design, of course, design, but what does that mean? What does that mean? The service you sell are a byproduct of your value. For example, air is necessary, but it has no value. But if you take the air away, suddenly it gains value. Would you agree with that? If I could suck the air out of the room you're in and charge you money for it, would you pay me? Of course you would. Because without air, you would die, right? Well, your value is what you want to make people to die for. You want to somehow show them the value. Well, Jim, that's impossible. With the virus going on, they're more afraid of the virus than what I have to offer. Well, how do you make them stop that? Show the value of what you do and how it combats the virus. For example, renovation is always interesting because that was happening even during COVID. And plastic, we work for the Vinyl Institute, which makes the resins, which makes the plastics. They were so busy. They were making plexiglass, they couldn't keep up. And now you see plexiglass here. So remodelers, when they go in, suddenly were erecting plastic walls, which they had already, but to cut down the infection. And they would leave notes on the table for their clients. And the clients would fill out the notes and leave the room. Innovate. Innovate. Zoom rooms will always be here from now on. Start with a virtual meeting. We're going to talk about that. So give value to what you're doing. Ask yourself, ladies and gentlemen, what makes you unique? What are you doing that your competitor doesn't doing? Are you huddling down and waiting? Or are you going out and doing something? What is your competitor doing you don't do? And why do your customers like you? You still have customers. That's why you're still in the audience, right? What do they like about you? That's your value when they start talking. And what do they dislike about you? These are difficult questions, but if you're going to play in this new world, you have to ask those questions. COVID has changed the answers to these questions. There's no question about it. I'm being redundant, but they have changed. We picked up a new client during COVID. We picked up new projects during COVID from our current clients. The new client came to us because of a referral, which they come to you for. But basically, this was a client that had never advertised, that wanted to advertise, and we're going great guns with this client. It's not impossible. It just takes persistence, willpower, and discovering your unique value. And value, as I mentioned, is a perception. And it's an emotional reaction to perceived value. Are you here to help people in overcoming their fear to get things done, right? And safety. Food has value, but not if you're hungry. There's a great scene in Hombre with Paul Newman where they're in a stagecoach and the lady said that she saw the Indians eating dog and she would never eat dog. And Paul Newman, who was raised by the Indians, says, have you ever been hungry? And the lady said, I don't care how hungry I was, I would never eat a dog. And Paul Newman says, without blinking and just looking at her very seriously, he says, you not only eat the dog, you would fight for the bones. That's true hunger. I feel like a burger today. That's not hunger. Business, you need a hunger for business. You have to be hungry for business and not settle for anything else except business. And you, not me, not your neighbor, not other architects, not Gensler, have to shape perceptions. You do. And you shape perceptions by what you do, how you do it, how often you do it, et cetera, et cetera. And you make it through your services and your products. Your marketing, ladies and gentlemen. Here's where you want to be. If you take away a brand, people will find a replacement. Or they won't. If the COVID's going on, if you take away things, they're not going to do anything unless it's toilet paper, right? You remember toilet paper? Should we talk about that for a minute? What the heck was that all about? Suddenly there was a rush If you remember early COVID, there was a shortage of toilet paper for at least a month until they started stocking again. What was that all about? That was totally driven by what? Fear? I would suggest fear. And now you got so much toilet paper, right? The poor trees. No, I'm kidding. But that's what you're looking for. I talked to a plumbing contractor the other day. I was interviewing him for a project, and one of the things he told me, he says, besides the toilet paper rush, he noticed that people were buying more bidet seats, which is great, right? Great bidet seats. That's not what by the way, they bought them for a number of reasons. But what he did is he went on Amazon, bought as many as he could. He went to his local supply house, bought as many as he could, and he sold them to eager customers who wanted to buy bidet seats. This was, I think, in St. Louis. I forget now. That's called innovation. That's taking care of the fear. It's taking advantage of the fear. I didn't say anything wrong, did I? To capitalize on the fear with a solution, not just making the solution up, but a real live solution. And he brought great value to his customers. He endeared himself to his customers. Because if you take away value, people will protest. That's what you want to do. If people stop using you, if you take your services away, you want people to complain. But what are people protesting about these days? And does it have anything to do with your brand? And how can you move yourself into a position to take advantage of what they're protesting? I can't send my kid to school. I'm not saying start a school. I'm not saying start a daycare service. I'm saying, how do you address that? What can you do to become a consultant, perhaps, to a school, to ease the minds in order to help people understand what school is? School, like everything else, is being redefined. Forget the word reimagined. It's being redefined. Are you going to sit back and watch it be redefined, or are you going to help redefine it? Those are the questions you have to ask yourself. And if the mountain will not come to Mohammed, Mohammed must go to the mountain. You can't sit around and wait to be told that this is going to be the solution. You have to go out and do it, ladies and gentlemen. And that comes from the differentiation of your services. Well, Jim, I'm just an architect. Jim, I'm just a designer. Jim, I'm just a manufacturer's rep. Jim, I'm this, I'm this, I'm this. You're not. You're not just that. If we were just another marketing firm, we wouldn't be standing, I assure you. We would not be here today. But we're not just another marketing firm. We're not. We continue to differentiate ourselves through our services, through our products, through the things we do for our clients, the way we answer the phone. We didn't shut down, and we live in Illinois. That's the first thing the governor did here is he shut down non-essential businesses, right? Well, we didn't shut down. We declared ourselves an essential business, and we've been open, and we fought through it. You have to fight through it. In other words, you add your value. You don't do value added, and your value comes from differentiation, right? You have to stand out. And you do that, sometimes that's edgy, sometimes you get people angry, sometimes it's a little risky. If you don't do that, no pain, no gain, remain the same. Should I repeat that? No pain, no gain, remain the same. And that's really what we're talking about. You're adding a higher value to your customer's bottom line. You're making them feel safe. It could be real. It could be a perception. I was in a designer group the other day. We were in a Zoom room. There were 25 designers in there, and they were talking different concepts. Some go with masks on to their clients. Some go and they hold the mask up and they say, do you want me to wear this? And they let the client decide. It doesn't really matter what you believe or I believe. It's what the client believes, because it is not about you. It's about them. But you have to make it about you, showing that you share their same risks that they do. You share their risks in accomplishing your tasks, whatever you're selling. It's not about you. It's about them, but make it about you. And you have to do it digitally. I'm going to breeze through these slides because this will make your head spin. Since COVID, right, 75% of people went to Google. Now it's 95% go to Google first. And if you're not on page one with what you do, you're not even considered. I'm just telling you right now. We studied this continually. There's a way to be on page one. We'll talk about that. You're in a digital world. Let's face it. So act digitally. Before, I was talking to one of the people in the audience today this morning. He says, Jim, I can't wait to start seeing people again. And I said, Mike, if I saw you, I'd give you a hug for sure, because I'm vaccinated now, right? But the point is, you see people digitally. You can see people anytime. And guess what? Some of you are not online. You're on the phone today, right? The phone is your greatest asset, and it's virus free. You can call anybody you want up. You can talk to anybody you want. And even though many people like to Zoom these days, and that's great, the phone has always been your secret weapon to plunge through the fear. Well, Jim, people won't talk to me. Jim, we were talking to a guy the other day, and this relates to some of the tactics I'm going to show in a moment. We were pitching with a publisher, a major project management software company. This is a major company, right? And his biggest complaint is he couldn't connect with people. He cannot get people to return his calls. And he said, if you have the secret to that, Jim, boy, would I like to know that. And I said, quite honestly, how much would you pay for that information? How much would you pay for us to connect you to these people that you want to target? And there was these, did you hear that? That's what was on the phone. Now, I just told you the phone is a great asset for you to talk. If you've ever had silence on the phone, even for what I just described, those few seconds, that's a tell. He subsequently came back online and said, no one's ever asked me that question. Well, why not? Because that's the essence of the question, is if that's what you want, how much are you willing to pay for it? And he had no idea. And we subsequently realized that this is not going to work out the way we wanted to deliver it for him. He wanted it handed to him on a silver platter. No such thing. There is no such thing. There never was. But for some reason, before COVID and after COVID, people think that the order is just going to be handed to them. You have to work for it, ladies and gentlemen. But you can get people to return phone calls. You can get people into a Zoom room. We work for the leading eco-architect in the world, one of the leading guys out of Malaysia. I'm not going to mention his name. We put him in a room with one of the major architectural firms in the United States building, I know you're going to laugh, stadiums. Well, who goes to stadiums now? That's not the question. Who's going to go to stadiums in the future is the question. The stadiums are not going to go away. And if they do go away, they're going to migrate into something else. They will be of use, but maybe not tomorrow. And the value of what we did was it just blew up because he wanted to be connected to Jeff Bezos. He said, Jim, I need to talk to Jeff Bezos. I said, who doesn't? That's not in our sweet spot. That's not in our value. That's not my value to connect you to Jeff Bezos, whatever the hell his name is. Anyway, I'm telling you that story because that's what you have to do in a digital world, and here's how you do it. Any questions before I continue? I'm looking, still looking. I don't see any questions. I must be doing okay. All right. These tactics were true before COVID. They're true after COVID. However, they may have changed since COVID, the way you do them. And we're going to talk about that today. All right. All right. Advertising. Newsletters didn't change. You can still send newsletters. I get newsletters every day. I told you about the Gensler newsletter. By the way, it's called Dialogue. You can do them. You can have a professional do them. We have a media outlet called KB Resource, KB-Resource. I encourage you to check it out. We're in that business as well. You can be in the business. You are, in fact, a publisher. You can still run magazine advertising in newspapers, but be careful because that's changing. Because of the digital world you live in. Most media outlets have digital websites. Just be careful. You can have programs. You can go to your manufacturers and say, you know what, I want to do a program with you. Let's talk. Well, Jim, I can't do that because I'm really an architect and I got to maintain my third-party objectivity. Who's saying you can't? Who's saying you cannot talk to one of the people on your short list and just say, what do you got the latest? I'd like to share some information with my clients. Do you know manufacturers will go crazy to do that with you? Right now, most manufacturers are wasting lots of money going to media outlets talking to outer space, right? People who may or may not be in the audience, people who may or may not take advantage of them. Whereas you have a client list, you have a prospect list. If you go to any manufacturer and say, I want to do a direct mail program with you, not a physical direct mail, but why not? Physical direct mail works. I told you I would talk fast, didn't I? Physical direct mail works, but so does digital direct mail. And you talk to the manufacturer and say, what have you got? What have you got in the terms of commercial buildings now? What's hot? What can you share that I can share with my clients? It's amazing what you do once you start conversations, but you have to do that. Your manufacturer is not going to call you up and say, hey, Donnie, I'd like to get a program going with you. They're not going to do that. They don't know what to do. They're like us, right? They're like you. They're like many people. They don't know what to do. I was talking to a major bank, starts with a C, I won't say anymore, on Friday, and banks still want our business. I don't know why, I'm just a small company. This is a major bank, and I'm talking to them. And as we were talking, I said, well, do you know, what does the future hold? And they were talking about that, the variability, how you should move your business here, blah, 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 right? And I said, let me ask you this question. Do you know do you have a crystal ball? And can you tell me what's going to happen in the future? And this is what I heard. Did you hear that? There was laughter then subsequently and said, no one knows. Of course no one knows. No one knows. Look at the jobs report last Friday. Look how wrong everybody was. No one knows. My point is, who cares what people know? It's what you know. It's what you're willing to do to get business going for you. This is probably one of the most important charts you'll see in here. There's an overall audience, people who see your message, people who read your message, and then there's inquiries. No matter what you do, whether it's advertising, whether it's email, it doesn't matter. You're going to have an overall audience. For example, people say, well, I'd like to advertise on Facebook. Facebook has 1 billion people, right? Or millions and millions and millions of people on their platform. You really want to talk to 1 billion people? Seriously? Well, Jim, I heard Facebook can target. Well, yeah. Have you ever tried a Facebook campaign? And how did that work for you? If it worked, I'm applauding for you. If it didn't work, don't worry about it. It doesn't work for many people. But they don't know what to do, so they try everything. And I'm encouraging you to try things. But if it doesn't work, switch. Don't just keep doing the same thing. What do they say? That's the thing to what? Madness? Doing the same thing that doesn't work over and over again. So here's some tips on advertising. Try something bold. Redefine it. Nobody knows what advertising is. You know, there's such a thing as ad blockers now you can put on your browser. One is called Ghostry, G-H-O-S-T-R-Y, Ghostry. It's free. Put it on your browser, and you'll never see another ad. That's not what I'm talking about. Redefine advertising. It's a newsletter. It's an email. It's a personal email to people. I send out emails with information attached to it on construction projects. And inevitably, I send it to my client list, which grows, my prospect list, which grows. And sometimes, once in a while, I'll get a sincere thank you for this information. Most of the time it goes, and this is what I get back. You hear that? Not even in an, and that's okay. I don't send it out to get applause, and I send it out to share information and keep Interline's name in front of my prospects and clients. That's why you share information. I'm redefining it. Well, Jim, you're a direct response guy. Isn't it a fact that you need a call to action? Well, there's always a call to action in my email message, I say to myself, said I. But just because they don't respond doesn't mean I'm not going to do it, right? If you believe in the value of what you're doing, you keep doing it. If you don't, change it. Ask questions. You know, half your brain responds to visuals. Make it visual. You know, ready, aim, fire. That's great in the old days. Now it's ready, fire, aim, fire again. Keep going. There's a great blog, The Truth About Native Advertising, on our website. The phone, I told you, is a secret weapon. I'm not going to belabor this because we're running short of time. You should be on the phone continually. You should return every call that people call you. I do, even if it's to a vendor. Salesforce, I filled out over the weekend. I was doing research and I filled out a form on Salesforce to get their 4th edition. It's a beautiful report, and because they poll many people. But of course, it's a sales ploy. We know that. That's why they offer this report. I fill it out Monday morning at 8 o'clock in the morning Central Time. I get a phone call from someone named Morgan. I couldn't take the call. I called her back. We played phone tag. I had a 2-minute wonderful conversation about Salesforce, why I downloaded the report. And she said, you know, if you need additional information, I can point you to the right person. She's just the tip of the iceberg, which most big companies have. They have a scout, a qualifier before they bring in the big guns. We have Salesforce administrators on staff. We have managed Salesforce for our bigger clients. We know all about it. I just wanted the latest information because I was looking for a nugget for a piece of research I'm doing. And it was a great call. It was a great call. People's voice speaks volumes. Don't be afraid to use it. Don't be afraid to use it. And including, well, Jim, they never call me back. That's okay. Leave a message. Leave a different message. Leave a sincere. I'm not going to call you. If you don't call me back, I'm not going to call you. Don't leave a message like that. I have a whole course on phones, but use that phone because it's virus free. Call a radio program. Here's some tips. Respond to something with a phone call. Paint a picture. We had a case history to do for a client. This just happened a month ago. The sales rep for that client could not get to first base with the end user, which was a major Massachusetts concern. They run all the state parks in Massachusetts, right? Within 2 minutes, I found by going through a database, Construct Connect, I found out who the end user is, her name. I emailed her. She emailed me back, right, within a half hour and told me who to talk to. I talked to that person and we developed the story. The next day, that lady that pointed me in the right direction retired. Talk about timing. You have to take the initiative. You have to respond to something and paint a picture with your voice. Ladies and gentlemen, do you think I'm sitting down when I'm talking to you? I wish I should show you. I am not sitting down. I'm standing on my desk, jumping. And call back no matter. I'm kidding. Internet, websites. Your website is your point of contact with everybody. It's your differentiation. Ladies and gentlemen, it's the most important marketing tool you have. There is no marketing tool more important than your website. It's where you want all the eyeballs going there. So make sure it's up to date. And make sure you connect your social media platforms to it. And make sure you use it the right way. And blog. You want to be on page 1? Write content. Have content. Use content. Am I being redundant? Do you have a Zoom room? You should be Zooming with people. Some tips to using the website. Inspire, be inspired. Go on the internet and look at other industry websites. You should do social media, but listen, don't talk. Listening on social media is really the key to social media. Not the BS, but listening to trends and using social media as a listening tool, not a distribution. You can still distribute information, but it's mainly a listening tool. And do a video, and then do another video, because video is very important. Very important. Become mobile. Other activities, community events, sponsorships, routine PR. You should be sending out information all the time, because one thing that media outlets thirst for they really thirst for is really what? Content. So keep them buried in content. Work with showrooms, work with architects, work with people you need to work with, other professionals. Create events, a Zoom event, right? A panel discussion. These things are there because people, those who fear it, if you're going to differentiate, they still need to hear things and see things. You cannot stop people from wanting to see and hear and taste and smell. You can't do it. You can't do it. It will not happen. Why? Because these things just don't cut it anymore. So change the way you do these things. Change the way you do these things. Do it digitally. Digitally. You can do it digitally. Here's some tips. Do something for the community. Start a community event online. Do something. Join an organization. Never send anything out without a picture or YouTube, and deal with the crisis fast. Simon Sinek, if you know who he is, wrote Selling the Why, right? If you're familiar with him. He was on a broadcast by the Business of Fashion, BOF, Business of Fashion. It's one of my great secret weapons. And he was being interviewed by the founder of that. And he was talking, and a couple of years ago, I was at a NARI conference talking, and the guy in front of me was preaching Simon's philosophy, which is selling the why. He says, Simon's gig is that everybody knows the what and the how you do it. Forget that and tell them why. What's more important? Why. Why is more important. And there were about 30 people in the audience, remodelers in the audience. And as this guy preached his Simon message, hands started to go up towards the end and saying, listen, that's exactly what I'm doing, but I'm still losing projects. And I listened to that exchange and I wrote this blog. It's now one of the most read blogs that I have on my website, Selling the Why and Why It Ain't So. It's not about the why anymore. It's about the how and the when and the what and the why. It's all of it. It's all of it. It's all of it. Very, very important. And if you Google Selling the Why, you'll see him. There he is, Simon Sinek. But you'll also see Interline Group. If you see on the bottom, Selling the Why and Why It Ain't So. The reason I'm on page 1 with Simon is because I wrote that piece, Google indexed it, and more people started looking at it, and you rise in the rankings. That's how you do SEO. Broadcast. Be careful of television. That's splintered like crazy. You know, from 3 stations, you have, now you have all these streaming channels without commercials. Radio is important. It's still very good. So be careful if you're going to invest in that. Because when you think about that, radio, these broadcast schools, you really are the channel. It's not there. WBBM is not the channel. It is a channel. They certainly have a reach, but so do you. You're an influencer. Influencers gather audiences around them. They grow their audiences. And if you know anything about influencers, they now command a big dollar payout for what they do. Very important. You are an influencer. So differentiate, look around and ask questions. Do the unexpected. Don't just do what, oh, I have to act like this because I'm an architect. Do something different. Remember, whatever you're doing digitally only lasts a minute anyway, right? It only lasts for a few minutes. By the next day, they forgot. And that's why you got to keep pounding them over and over and over. That's my hand slapping each other. Always cross-sell. Always be closing. You should always be selling. I'm accused by my staff every time they hear me on the phone. Jim, you're always selling. Well, of course I am. Of course you are, or you should be. There's no time to waste, ladies and gentlemen. There's 24 hours in a day. And if you're not selling, guess who's selling? Your competitor is selling, right? The only reason we're still, I'm telling you right now, truth. The only reason we're still standing is because we have a devoted client to the degree that they recognize our differentiation and they use us. They don't want to use you. They don't want to use me, but they use us because they need something. Give them what they want and listen to your people. I've been doing a lot of talking today. I'd love to hear from you. Ask me some questions, right? And because it's very hard these days. How do you handshake these days? I remember when Fauci banned handshaking. I had an attorney who rents space from us here come by the other day, picked up his mask. He wouldn't shake my hand. He had the vaccine. I had the vaccine. Wouldn't shake my hand. I had to do the elbow on the fist bump. It's his choice. I'm just saying. Let's think about this, right? Network. Okay, that's really the key to the situation. To stay in front of your customers, you have to know who you are, what your value is, determine your value added, and then I'm going to recite my poem. He who has a thing to sell and goes and whispers in a well is not so apt to get the dollars as he who climbs a tree and hollers. I have never stopped yelling. Some people accuse me of being a ham, on stage. I love it. It's a performance, right? It's not about what you put in front of them, but when, how much, and how often. Keep selling. Offer them your value. Find your value and keep throwing that value out. Somebody will listen to you. I feel like sometimes Mr. Smith goes to Washington. Somebody will listen to me. If you remember that great movie. Anyway, time for questions. I got a lot of people in this audience, but I don't see any questions. I can't believe it. Really? Nobody wants to ask me a question. I'm going to wait 1 second. How much time do I have? I still have 10 minutes. Holy mackerel. No questions. How about in the chat room? No. All right. I have 3 questions for you. You thought I wasn't prepared. Oh, there's a question. Hold on. Let's see. Mike has a question. Mike has a question. Where's his question? 1 second. Mike, where's the question box? Where did it go? Can't find the question. Where the hell did the question go? Mike, I'm going to unmute you. Can I unmute you? You've self-muted yourself. Because my question box disappeared. Holy mackerel. Holy moly. Holy moly. Question box is gone. I don't know what happened to it. Well, Mike, I'll answer your question. Oh, it just says, there it is. It appeared suddenly. Well done, sir. It's not a question, it's a compliment. I'll take it. I have 3 questions for you. How do you deal with the declining client quality due to the onslaught of online shopping? How do you deal with that? I want to hear from you. What is a clear brand message that would attract the right clients to your business? Come on, what is that message? And what are the top earners in your field doing that you are not doing, but you could be doing? Those are my questions to you, ladies and gentlemen, and I expect you to answer them. I'm kidding. Thank you so much. If you have any questions about this seminar, you can contact me by email, Jim@interlinegroup, Jim@interlinegroup.com. You can call me, 847-358-4848, 847-358-4848. You can also go to interlinegroup.com/evaluate. And if you fill that form out, I'll give you our guides, our 8 guides for free. Or you can follow me on Twitter at @InterlineJim. The next webinar we're going to have is the first Tuesday, June 8th, delighting customers with your websites. We encourage you to attend, tell your friends. These webinars are also online. You can take them for credit. If you missed some of them in the past, we're going to post this one online and replace the one that's there now because these are all live and different. And I'd like to personally thank you so much for your time, for your attention, and I hope to hear from you in the future because we're still going to be pitching. Thank you again. Have a great day.